a psychological revenge thriller where the victim is the prime suspect, and every clue is a masterpiece of deceit. This is not a murder mystery. This is a marriage dissected. What if your entire life was a lie? What if the person you loved most was building a cage for you, one perfect day at a time? Finn Cole taught the world how to feel nothing. His wife, Evie, is about to teach him what real pain feels like. The Silent Cure, Part 1. Streaming now, only on Novella Station. Dive into the mind of a master manipulator. Subscribe to Novella Station. Hit like if you crave stories that twist. And tell us in the comments, do you trust the husband or the ghost? Come to your own station for stories. Novella Station. Make sure to subscribe, like the video, and post your comments. Chapter 1. The Practical Man. A perfect morning. A perfect life. A perfectly staged crime scene. Self-help guru Finn Cole returns from his run to find his wife missing and a violent struggle in their pristine home. But where is the body? And why is his first call not to scream, but to analyze? The first chapter is live, only on Novella Station. The alarm sings its first, gentle tone at 5:45 a.m. My thumb finds the button on the first pulse, killing the second before it can disrupt the perfect, purchased silence of the room. I do not groan. I do not stretch. I execute the first conscious ritual of the day, a long, deliberate exhale. A system reset. The brain is a machine. This is its boot sequence. My feet find the floor. Cool bamboo. Practical. The Blackwell ankle socks are where they belong. Top drawer, left side. The gray running gear hangs on its single, integrated hanger. I dress in the in-suite, under the cool, surgical glare of the LEDs. This is not consideration for Evie. It is systems management. A disrupted sleep cycle introduces variables, fatigue, emotional latency, a craving for sugary breakfast that throws off the weekly meal prep. It is simpler, more efficient to let the other component in the system rest undisturbed. At the bedroom door, I turn. She is a soft mound under the Irish linen, one hand curled near her cheek. Peaceful, optimal. The click of the door is soft, definitive. The morning air off the lake is a cold blade. I welcome it. My breathing settles into a rhythm on the second stride. In for 4, out for 4. The loop is 7 kilometers. I know every route, every seam in the asphalt. My mind does not wander. It audits. Today's podcast recording at 10 a.m. The topic, emotional frugality. Why modern men should invest, not spend. The key metaphor, a personal emotional 401k. Avoid volatile, high-cost expenditures, drama, rage, public grief. Compound the steady, low-yield returns of calm. The outline is complete. Evie will have the studio prepped. She always does. Our 7th anniversary dinner tonight. Le Jardin, 8 p.m. I've ordered the flowers, white orchids, not roses. Roses are a cliché, an inefficient use of symbolism. Orchids suggest rare understanding. Evie will understand the distinction. She appreciates precision. I pass the Lawson place. A light is on upstairs. Another variable, likely a sick child. That will mean a distressed wife, a delayed work schedule for him, a cascade of inefficiency. I make a note to have Evie send a soup delivery later. It is a cost-effective investment in neighborhood social capital. My body reports no fatigue, only a satisfying hum of operation. The numbers glow on my wrist, 6.92 kilometers. I slow to a walk at the foot of our driveway, letting my heart rate descend with controlled gradualism. The house emerges from the pines, a glass and steel composition. I designed it to be a manifesto. Everything in its place, visible, accountable. Nos a dos. The kitchen is as I left it, spotless, the marble counters a blank page. I pour filtered water, exactly 20 ounces. As I drink, I see it. The chair by the breakfast nook is on its side. Not dramatically flung, but tilted, its back against the island leg. A single, fallen thing in the geometry of the room. I set the glass down. No sound. My first thought is not of intrusion or violence. It is a process. Evie is not a clumsy woman. She moves with a ballet dancer's economy. A fallen chair is data. Anomalous data. I move into the room. The house is silent, but it is the wrong kind of silence. It's not the silence of absence, but of interruption. Then, the smell. Metallic, undercut with cloying sweetness. And the stain. It spread from the center of the floor, a dark, viscous lake catching the first weak rays of sun through the eastern window. It is not uniformly red. It is a composition, dark crimson at the epicenter, fading to pink at its feathered edges, with strange, syrupy trails through it. Cranberry, and something else. Maple? Beside it, glinting, is a shard of crystal. The decanter, our anniversary gift from her parents last year. The data points a symbol, rapid fire, fallen chair. Stain, broken glass. No Evie. My training engages. The silent cure, principle 3. Perception is a choice. Choose the useful one. Panic is not useful. It is system corruption. I choose analysis. I do not call her name. If she were here, I would see her. If she were hurt, she would have made sound. Therefore, she is not here. I step carefully around the stain, my running shoes silent on the floor. I check the garage. Her car is there. The Volvo, pristine. I open the driver's side door. The interior light comes on. Empty. The keys are not in the ignition. They are not on their hook in the mudroom. Back in the kitchen, I survey the scene. It is staged. It has the quality of a sentence with the punctuation missing. The violence is implied, but not evidenced. The stain is large, but there is no drag pattern, no secondary spatter. This is not an accident. It is a message. My heart is a steady, pounding drum now, but it is a physiological response. I acknowledge it. I do not let speak. I take my phone from my armband. My fingers are dry, steady. I pull up my contacts, find the number I have never dialed. I press call. It connects. Rings once. 911. What is your emergency? My voice, when it comes out, is calm, measured. It is my podcast voice. It is the most useful tool I have at this moment. My name is Finn Cole. I live at 2171 Pine Bluff Road. My wife, Evie Cole, is missing. There is evidence of a disturbance in our home. I listen to the dispatcher's questions. I answer with precision. No, I have not touched anything. No, I have not searched the property. Yes, I am alone. I hang up. The authorities are en route. The process has begun. I stand in my perfect, interrupted kitchen. The sun is fully up now, painting the viscous stain on the floor a bright, garish red. I look at it, and my mind, ever practical, begins to draft the next chapter. The chapter for public consumption. The husband, concerned but composed. The man who does not fall apart, because falling apart is an unaffordable luxury. I practice the look in the dark reflection of the oven door. Concern, confusion, a touch of stoic fear. It will need to be perfect. Evie, wherever she is, would expect nothing less. Chapter 2. System failure. The police see a concerned husband. The evidence tells a darker story. A damning diary. A hidden trust fund. A pen, stained and left by the lake. Every clue points to the man who teaches emotional calm. Is Finn Cole a grieving husband or a calculating killer? Chapter 2 is live, only on Novella Station. The first patrol car arrived in a wash of silent, swirling blue. I watched it from the living room window, a neutral observer in my own home. 2 officers, a man and a woman, emerged with that deliberate, weighty slowness they must teach at the academy. I met them at the door. Mr. Cole, the male officer asked, his eyes already scanning past me, into the bright, open space. Fiend, yes. Thank you for coming so quickly. I stepped back, granting access. A host welcoming guests to an unfortunate event. It's in the kitchen. I led them, saying nothing more. Pointless narration was a form of emotional spending. Let them see the data for themselves. The female officer, whose badge read Garrett, stopped short. Jesus, she breathed, her hand on her hip, her service weapon. Her partner, Rains, was already on his radio, his voice a low, urgent crackle requesting a supervisor in a crime scene unit. This is exactly as you found it, Rains asked, turning to me. His gaze was a physical pressure point, searching for a crack. Yes. I returned from my morning run at approximately 6:25. I entered through the garage, as I always do. I came in here for water. I saw this. I called you immediately. You didn't touch anything? Try to clean up? That would be counterproductive to finding my wife, officer. I kept my tone even informational. I understand the importance of evidence. Gare was looking at my clothes, my running shoes. You run every morning? 7 kilometers. A discipline. It maintains systemic efficiency. The phrase came out automatically, a line from chapter 6. I saw a flicker in her eyes. Not recognition, but categorization. Weird, calm guy. The house began to fill. Men and women in jumpsuits, carrying cases. A photographer's flash popped, turning the kitchen into a stuttering crime scene photo. I was asked to wait in the living room, a designated component removed from the machine. I sat in the Eames chair, my posture perfect, and watched the machine work. I calculated the manpower, 8 individuals now. The fiscal cost per hour. The statistical likelihood of a stranger abduction in this zip code versus the probability of domestic escalation. My own mind was my best asset, and I set it running on clean, logical rails. Mr. Cole, a new voice. A woman in a sharp, unadorned blazer, her dark hair pulled back so tightly it seemed to stretch the skin of her forehead. Detective Mori. Her eyes didn't scan the room. They targeted. She absorbed everything in one slow sweep and then pinned me in the center of her vision. I am Fiend Cole. Detective Lorna Mori. She didn't offer a hand. This is your home. It is. And your wife is Evie Cole. It wasn't a question. She had already known the name. Yes. Tell me about your morning. From the beginning. I repeated the sequence. The alarm. The run. The return. The stain. I used the same, precise language. Consistency was key. You and Evie, she said, leaning against the steel frame of the bookshelf. You have a good marriage? A subjective question. A trap for emotional variables. I chose a factual answer. We have been married 7 years today. Our goals and lifestyles are compatible. Compatible. She let the word hang. Did you argue last night? A 7-year itch on your anniversary? Principle 7. Redirect intrusive emotional inquiry with a shared, rational fact. We had a discussion. Evie expressed a desire to reevaluate our timeline for children. I expressed that our current dynamic is highly functional. It was a dialogue, not an argument. Maury's expression didn't change. A dialogue. And how did that dialogue end? We went to sleep. In the same bed. Yes. And this morning, you just went for your run. Didn't check on her? Give her a kiss goodbye. I prioritized her sleep cycle. Waking her would have been an inconsiderate disruption. Even in my own ears, it sounded cold. Calculated. I saw the note she made on her pad. A single, dark checkmark. A CSI tech appeared in the doorway, holding an evidence bag. Inside was a sleek, silver fountain pen. My Mont Blanc. A gift from Evie for my first bestseller. For the man who writes his own rules, the card had said. Found this, the text said, his voice hushed. On the flagstones by the lake shore. There's a transfer stain on the nib. Looks like it might be the same substance. Maury took the bag, held it up. The pen looked accusatory in the clear plastic. This yours? It is. A fancy pen to leave outside. It belongs in the holder on my desk. In my study, which was strictly my space. A boundary Evie never crossed. Maury's gaze moved from the pen to me and back. We're going to need to take a more formal statement down at the precinct, Mr. Cole. And we'll need your permission to search the premises. All of it. System alert. Containment breach imminent. The machine was no longer just examining the anomaly. It was preparing to dismantle the entire system to understand it. Of course, I said, my voice still steady, the ultimate act of emotional frugality. Whatever is useful. But as I said it, I looked past her through the wall of glass to the lake. My mind, against my will, abandoned logic and presented me with an image. Evie's hand, that elegant, precise hand, not curled peacefully by her cheek in bed, but in the dark, placing my pen carefully on cold stone, wiping it clean, smearing it with a mixture of cranberry juice and syrup. Planning. The first true variable enter my system. It wasn't fear for her. It was fear of her. A deep, chilling drip of cognition. This wasn't a random event. This was a critique. And she had written it in my own language, cold, clear, and devastatingly practical. Chapter 3. Efficiency as Evidence. His philosophy is now his motive. Detective Mori dissects Finn's silent cure and finds a blueprint for murder. Meanwhile, Finn makes a chilling discovery: his wife's private writing. Did he ever really know her? Or was he living with a ghost? Chapter 3 is live, only on Novella Station. The precinct was a symphony of controlled chaos. Ringing phones, muttered conversations, the clack of keyboards. A world of pure, grubby reaction. I sat in the small, airless interview room, my back straight against the hard plastic chair, and practiced being a rock in a river. The noise washed around the idea of me, leaving my core untouched. Detective Mori had left me here to get settled. A power play, a test of my emotional frugality. I used the time to audit my position, assets, my public profile, my reputation for calm. A spotless record, not even a parking ticket. The visible, curated life in the glass house. Liabilities, the pen. The discussion about children. My effect. I could see how my practicality would read to them. As emptiness. As a void where a husband's terror should be. The door opened. Mori entered, followed by a younger, bulkier detective she introduced as Alvarez. He carried a file. Mori carried nothing but her focus. "Let's go over the timeline again, Mr. Cole," she said, sitting across from me. With more specificity. We did. I gave her the minute-by-minute breakdown of my run, supported by the GPS data on my watch, which I'd already synced and offered. Alvarez took notes. Mori listened, her eyes never leaving my face. "And after this dialogue about children," she said, circling back, always back to that, "you just went to sleep. No lingering tension." Detective, a key tenet of my work, is the decoupling of dispute from identity. An unresolved conversation is not a personal injury. We chose to shelf the topic for a more optimal discussion time. Alvarez blinked. Mori's mouth tightened, just a millimeter. I'd spoken another paragraph from the book. It sounded absurd here, under the flickering fluorescent light. "Right?" Mori said flatly. She opened the folder Alvarez had brought. "Your work, The Silent Cure. I've been reading up. Emotion is a currency best spent on guaranteed returns. That's quite a philosophy. It's a methodology for reducing personal suffering and increasing functional capacity." Uh-huh. She pulled a photograph from a file. It was a page from a notebook, the writing a familiar, elegant script. "Evie's. We found this in your wife's private desk drawer. A locked drawer in her study nook." My breath hitched, the first real, physiological slip. Evie had a study nook? She wrote in a notebook? These were data points I did not possess. I'd assumed her domain was the living, social areas, the kitchen, the garden, the spaces meant to be seen. A private, locked drawer was a shadow in my glass house. "What is it?" I asked, my voice careful. "It reads like a diary entry. Dated 3 weeks ago." Mori cleared her throat and read, her tone neutral, but the words landed like blows. "Today, Finn explained that my sadness about my mother's passing was inefficient. He suggested I schedule my grief for 1 hour on Sunday mornings to contain the spillover. He was so calm, so rational. I wanted to throw my coffee mug at his head. I wanted to scream until his systems overloaded. Instead, I smiled and said, 'That's a practical idea, darling. I am becoming a ghost in his machine.' The room tilted. Not the words themselves. The sentiment was plausible. I had suggested structured grief management. It was a sound, evidence-based technique. But the tone, the seething, vivid fury beneath it, the ghost in his machine. That was not my Evie. My Evie was seamless, agreeable. She was the ideal user of my methodology. I began, but my logic circuit scrambled. Denial was emotional. Agreement was catastrophic. Evie never expressed that to me. She appreciated structure. She appreciated it so much she wrote it down in a locked drawer, Alvarez said, speaking for the first time. His voice was a low rumble of disbelief. Mori laid down another photo. "A financial record. We've also been looking into your wife's background. Her family money. The Sterling Trust." A cold, precise dread, the only kind I seemed capable of, dripped down my spine. That's been dormant for years. Evie was never materialistic. We live on my earnings. It was reactivated 6 months ago, Mori said, tapping the page. And upon her death, the sole beneficiary is you. The word hung in the air. Death. They were no longer saying missing. Her death is not a proven state, I said, the sentence clipped. And I had no knowledge of the trust reactivation. That would be a decision for her alone. Convenient, Alvarez muttered. Mori leaned forward, her elbows on the table, invading the careful buffer zone of my personal space. Let me paint a picture for you, Mr. Cole. A pragmatic picture. A husband whose entire brand is emotional nullity feels trapped by a wife who wants a child he doesn't. He discovers she has a fortune he didn't know about to become permanently inaccessible in a divorce. He sees a practical solution. He stages a scene. He uses his knowledge of performance, because that's what your methodology is, isn't it? A performance of calm to outlast the investigation. He's the king of coping, after all. He can cope with anything, even being a widower. Her version was a grotesque parody of my life's work. It was efficiency weaponized. It was my own philosophy reflected back at me in the distorted mirror of a murder motive. That is not a picture, I said, my knuckles white where my hands were clasped under the table. It is a caricature. My work is about managing internal states, not manipulating external ones for criminal gain. Is there a difference? Mori asked, and for the first time, I saw it in her eyes. Not just suspicion, but a deep, professional contempt. She saw my calm not as innocence, but as the ultimate guilt. The absence of a signal was, to her, the most damning signal of all. They let me go 2 hours later. Don't leave town, Mori said, the classic, tired line. It felt less like a legal requirement and more like a predator telling its prey the hunt had only just begun. A junior officer drove me back to my house, which was now ringed with yellow tape. A citation of evidence. I was allowed inside, but it was no longer my system. It was a corrupted file. The pervasive smell of fingerprint powder had replaced the subtle lemon verbena scent Evie used. I walked to her study nook, a charming window-lined alcove off the guest room I never used. The locked drawer had been forced. It was empty now, its contents in evidence bags. But I could see the faint impressions left behind on the velvet lining. The shape of a notebook. The long, thin slot for a pen. My pen. I stood there, in the silence of the violated house, and the full, horrific contrast of our marriage crashed over me. I had built a life of visible, optimal surfaces. She had been living a secret, annotated life in the margins. I had preached emotional frugality. She had been compiling a ledger of emotional debt with compound interest. I had believed we were a perfectly synchronized system. She had been a sleeper agent in my midst, waiting for the perfect moment to detonate. The tension wasn't in the police investigation. It was in the cracking of my own worldview. The most efficient revenge, I realized, would not be a crime of passion. It would be a crime of cold, meticulous critique. And she was proving to be the most efficient person I had ever known. Chapter 4, Corrosive Data. The Iceman headline is everywhere. His publisher flees. His fans turn. And in the chaos, a single, taunting email arrives. Check the dedication page. She's not just framing him. She's teaching him a lesson. Chapter 4 is live, only on Novella Station. The news broke at dawn. Not a trickle, but a flood. I learned about it from the vibration of my phone, a seismic event on the nightstand. I hadn't slept. I'd sat in my study. The crime scene tape a yellow slash across the doorframe and run scenarios. Legal, strategic, reputational scenarios. Sleep was an inefficient use of cognitive resources in a crisis. The first notification was from a news aggregator. Self-help guru Finn Cole questioned Ian wife's disappearance. Then, a text from my publicist Lily. Finn, call me now. It's everywhere. Then, a link from an anonymous number. I clicked it. A local news channel was playing a clip outside the precinct. There I was, walking to the squad car, my face a mask of composed concern. The cheering beneath me screamed. The Iceman? Silent Cure, author at center of mystery. My brand, my meticulously constructed persona, had been weaponized against me in under 12 hours. Lily's voice was a tight wire of panic. We need a statement. A compassionate, devastated husband's statement. We need to get in front of this. A statement implies there's something to explain beyond a tragic event, I said, my voice raspy from silence. We should project normalcy. My scheduled podcast recording today should proceed. Topic: Stoicism in the face of unfounded accusation. Are you insane? She hissed. They're calling you the Iceman. You can't double down on stoicism. You have to melt, Finn. Publicly. Just a little. Melting is system failure. System failure is better than prison. She hung up. I scrolled. The narrative was crystallizing with terrifying speed. Maury's pragmatic picture was being painted in broad, sensational strokes across the digital landscape. Blogs dissected passages from The Silent Cure, highlighting lines about shedding inefficient emotional attachments. A Reddit thread had already surfaced a grainy photo of me from a book signing, Evie in the background handing me a water. Someone had circled her face and captioned it, "The ghost in his machine." He was teaching us how to erase her all along. The doorbell rang. Not the police. The media. A van was parked at the foot of the driveway, a satellite dish on its roof. A woman with a severe blonde bob and a too bright smile stood on my porch, a cameraman looming behind her. Principle 9. Control the environment. If you cannot control it, withdraw. I did not answer. I went to the garage, got into the Volvo, Evie's car. The police had finished with it, and backed out, using the automated gate at the rear of the property. The engine was whisper quiet. The interior smelled of her, the faint, clean scent of her moisturizer, and underneath the leather. It was disorienting. This was a component of her system, not mine. I felt like an imposter. I drove without a destination, a ridiculous luxury of fuel and time. But my mind needed the motion. I passed the Lawson house. No soup delivery had been sent. The social capital was now a deficit. I was the neighborhood's true crime story. My phone rang again. An unknown number with a 212 area code. New York. My agent. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, the transcript popped up on the car's screen. "Finn, it's Martin. The publisher is concerned. The morning show bookings for next week are canceling. They're talking about pausing the paperback rollout. We need a definitive human response. A tear on camera. Something. Call me." The machine was disassembling me. Piece by piece. My reputation, my income, my philosophy, all being framed as evidence of a monstrous inner life. I found myself at the public boat launch on the far side of the lake. From here, my house was a distant jewel box, sparkling cruelly in the morning sun. The perfect visible life. The trap. My phone buzzed with an email notification. The sender was my own website's contact Finn form. The subject line was blank. The body contained a single line in plain text. Check the dedication page. A cold that had nothing to do with efficiency seized my lungs. I fumbled with my phone, opening the digital copy of The Silent Cure I kept for reference. I swiped to the front matter, to the dedication page I hadn't looked at in years. It read, "Free. My perfect reader. Simple. Clean." I thought it clever, a nod to her support without being maudlin. But now, under the glare of this new, corrosive awareness, I saw it differently. My perfect reader. She hadn't just been reading the book. She had been studying it, learning its rules, understanding the man who wrote it better than he understood himself. To defeat a system, you must first become its expert user. The email had come from a proxy server. Untraceable. But it was her. It had to be. This was the next data packet in her transmission. A quiet, mocking ping to let me know she was still running the protocol. I got out of the car, the lake wind whipping at my running jacket. I stared at my distant house. The narrative was splitting into two incompatible truths. The public truth, Finn Cole, the emotional robot, had logically, quietly eliminated the one variable his system couldn't optimize, his wife. The private truth, Evie Cole, the perfect reader, had executed a devastating critique of my life's work using my own principles as the weapon. She was proving that the silent cure was not a philosophy for living. It was a blueprint for creating a perfect and perfectly vengeful victim And the most efficient part of her plan? She didn't have to lift a finger to destroy me anymore. She had programmed the world, Mori, the media, my publisher, my followers, to do it for her. My own system, turned against itself, was now my prison. The pace wasn't just fast, it was exponential, and I was still trying to solve it with logic, while she had already mastered the art of the story. Chapter 5. The Perfect Reader. Hear her voice. For the first time, step inside the mind of the ghost and the machine. Evie Cole records her truth. This isn't a crime of passion, it's a work of art. And her husband is the canvas. Chapter 5 is live, only on Novella Station. Audio log transcript, recovered from a cloud drive registered to E. Sterling. Location, unknown. Date stamp, corresponds to day 3 of the investigation. Begin recording. Evie Cole, test. Levels are good. It's strange, talking to a microphone again. The last time I did this, it was for my graduate thesis. Archival silences, the stories we don't preserve. I was recording my thoughts on gaps in the historical record. The letters burned. The voices not deemed important enough to save. Now, I'm creating the ultimate archival silence. Mine. I'm watching him. Or rather, I'm watching the news coverage of him. It's playing on a sleek, wall-mounted screen in this lovely, anonymous rental villa. The sound is off. I don't need to hear the talking heads. I can read the cheering. The cold case. Where is Evie? I can see his face. There he is, Finn Cole, exiting our beautiful glass box, surrounded by reporters. He looks impeccable, troubled, but in a sculpted, intentional way, like a man posing for a portrait titled Grief. He's using Principle 4, Project Calibrated Concern. Over-emotion is a drain. No emotion is a suspect. Find a precise midpoint. He's failing. He thinks he's hitting the midpoint, but the world doesn't see a midpoint. They see a void. They see the Iceman. It's working even better than I modeled. My motives? They want a simple story. A woman scorned. A cheated wife. A biological clock ticking like a bomb. It's so reductive, it's almost funny. It was never about the baby. Not really. It was the argument about the baby. The final, perfect data point. Let me explain. For 7 years, I was the subject of a long-term, unpublished study by Dr. Finn Cole. The topic: can a human woman be optimized to function as the perfect, low-maintenance component in a life system? I was his most passionate project. My wants, my academic ambitions, archival history, for God's sake, the study of what's been erased, my occasional sadness, my flash of temper, all were treated as system errors. Bugs to be patched. Evie, your frustration about the missed flight is understandable, but is expressing it to the airline clerk a useful expenditure of energy? Your mother's passing is a profound loss. I've blocked out 90 minutes for you to process on Sunday morning, so it doesn't destabilize your week. He'd say these things with such calm, such benevolent rationality. And I, the perfect reader, would smile and nod. You're so right, darling. Thank you for the framework. I became a ghost in his machine. A smiling, agreeing, high-functioning ghost. My rage didn't burn. It crystallized. It became a diamond-tipped drill, quietly boring through the bedrock of his arrogance. The trust fund reactivation? A lure. A shiny, obvious motive for the police to find. Maury found it right on schedule. The diary entries in the locked drawer? Forged, of course. But the sentiments were true. They were the ghost's testimony, left where a detective who distrusted him would be sure to look. And the pen? My favorite touch. His beloved Mont Blanc. The tool he uses to write his rules. I placed it by the lake after smearing it with my own concoction, cranberry, pomegranate molasses, a dash of iron supplement for that authentic metallic tang. He would see it and understand. This was not a crime of passion. This was a written crime. Authored. A plot point. On screen, they're showing a clip from his old podcast. Emotional frugality is about investing in long-term stability, not spending on short-term dramas. They cut from his smiling, talking head to a freeze frame of him looking stoic outside the police station. The contrast is devastating. The commentary writes itself. He must be scrambling now. He'll be auditing his position. Assets, liabilities. He'll be trying to solve me like a logic puzzle. But you can't solve a story with a spreadsheet. The human heart doesn't follow his principles of emotional accounting. It runs a deficit for years silently, and then it presents the bill with catastrophic compound interest. My desired result? Stage 1 is complete, the frame. He is trapped in the narrative of his own creation. The silent cure is now the prosecution's opening argument. Stage 2 is in motion, the unraveling. His publisher will drop him. His followers will vilify him. The police will tighten the noose with every piece of evidence I carefully left for them. He will try to remain logical, and with every logical, calm response, he will look guiltier. Stage 3 is the choice. I've left a trail, but not for them. For him. The email about the dedication page was the first breadcrumb. He'll have received it by now. Check the dedication page. He'll read it and feel the first true, illogical spark of fear. Not fear of prison, fear of me. The understanding that his perfect reader was taking notes for a very different purpose. I want him to know. I want the man who believes he cured himself of messy, inefficient emotions to be haunted by the one he couldn't quantify, couldn't optimize. My contempt. And then, when he is utterly destroyed, when the Finn Cole brand is a toxic joke, and he has nothing left of the life he built, I will give him a choice. I will re-enter the narrative, not as a victim, but as a fellow architect of ruin. We will be bound together forever, not by love, but by this shared, monstrous secret. A perpetual, silent standoff. The ultimate, inefficient marriage. He wanted a system free of drama. I'm giving him a masterpiece of it. And the beautiful, terrible irony is that to survive it, he will have to abandon every single principle he ever preached. He'll have to become emotional. He'll have to become desperate. He'll have to perform a breakdown, so convincing it might actually become real. And I, the archivist of our silence, will be watching, preserving every moment. Sound of a glass being set down, ice clinking. A long, slow sigh that is neither happy nor sad, but deeply, finally satisfied. Evie Cole, the system is rebooting, and I wrote the new operating system. End recording. Chapter 6, Breaking Protocol. He's followed her script. Now, she sends him a new one. A way out. To survive, Finn must commit the ultimate betrayal of himself. He must break down on national television. The performance of a lifetime begins. Chapter 6 is live, only on Novella Station. The email about the dedication page was a virus. It corrupted my primary operating system, logic. For 48 hours, I had functioned. I'd given terse, appropriate statements through Lily. I'd ignored the press staking out my gate. I'd review my legal options with a cold, expensive attorney named Graham who spoke about narrative counterassault and reasonable doubt. I was managing. Now, I was not managing. The understanding was a live wire in my chest. This was her, not a random event, not a crime of opportunity. A targeted, strategic strike. She was out there, watching. She had left the breadcrumb. This was a dialogue, and I had been monologuing for years. The pacing in my own house was inefficient, a waste of caloric energy, but I couldn't stop. From the living room window, I could see the media van, a patient shark. From my study, I could see the lingering CSI text down by the lakeshore, still looking for the body that didn't exist. My world had shrunk to this sterile, surveilled prison. My phone lit up. Lily, turn on Channel 8. Now, I found the remote. The screen filled with the smirking face of Chad something, a cable news pundit who traded in outrage. And what we're learning about the so-called silent cure is that it's less a philosophy and more a manifesto for narcissists. This isn't stoicism, people. This is emotional lobotomy. And now, his wife, the one person who is supposed to be exempt from this cost-benefit analysis of love, is gone. A graphic flashed beside his head, a photo of me from my book jacket, next to Evie's smiling, hopeful face from our wedding. The contrast was damning. The Chirin, cure or kill, it was working. Her plan was working perfectly. The public was not just turning against me. They were turning against the idea of me. My life's work was being pathologized on national television. Another notification. This one from a secure, encrypted messaging app, one used for confidential client sessions. I hadn't opened it in weeks. A new message. From an unknown, scrambled ID. Unknown, Principle 9, control the environment. If you cannot control it, withdraw. You're not withdrawing, Finn. You're ceding terrain. Bad strategy. The blood drained from my head. My fingers trembled as I typed. Me, who is this? Unknown, you know. The ghost has a username now. Check your spam folder. There's a draft. A way out. Maybe. I stared at the words. The ghost in his machine. She was quoting her own forged diary back to me. This was a level of audacious, intimate taunting that short-circuited my analytical protocols. This was pure, unfiltered conflict. She was engaging. She wanted to play. I opened my email, navigated to the spam folder. Among the pleas for penis enlargement and stranded royalty was a draft saved to a shared, cloud-based document editor we'd once used to plan a vacation. The title PR Protocol, Urgent. I clicked it. The document was in Evie's unmistakable, clean font. Finn, if you're reading this, the frame is set. Maury believes you did it. The public is leaning that way. Your calm rationalist pose is now your guilt. You cannot logic your way out of story. You must change the story. They need to see you break. Not a little. Not a single, manly tear. They need to see the dam crumble. They need to see the Iceman melt. It's the only counter-narrative that will create enough doubt to stall the machine. Proposal, grant one interview. To Maya Thorne at Channel 8. Her producer owes me a favor. She'll take the meeting. You will go in poised, and you will unravel. You will not mention me by name. You will speak about your failings, your emotional blindness. You will confess to being a terrible husband. You will take all the blame they want to heap on you, and you will add more. You will be so convincingly, pathetically guilty of everything except murder, that murder will start to seem like a bridge too far. It's a pivot, from calculated killer to self-absorbed fool. The fool is pitiable. The fool is not a premeditated monster. The fool can be forgiven, eventually. This is the move, the only one left. Do it within 48 hours, or the next data packet I release will be the GPS logs showing your car was stationary by the lake for 17 minutes the night I disappeared. Spoiler, I can forge those too. I read it 3 times. The pacing of the threat was masterful. It gave me no time to think, to consult, to optimize. It forced a reaction. It was also, I realized with a sickening lurch, brilliant. It was the one move I hadn't considered because it violated every principle I lived by. It demanded a performance of total emotional bankruptcy. It was the absolute negation of the silent cure. She wasn't just framing me. She was reprogramming me, forcing me to become the thing I despised to avoid becoming the thing she'd painted me as. I looked back at the TV. Chad the pundit was gone, replaced by a commercial for a law firm. Wrongly accused? We fight the narrative. I had no fight left. Only her script. I picked up the phone and called Lily. Her voice was frayed. Finn, please tell me you've had an epiphany about showing human emotion. Set up an interview, I said, my voice hollow, the sound of protocol breaking. With Maya Thorne at Channel 8. As soon as possible. What? Thorne is a shark. She'll eviscerate you. That's the point, I said, looking at Evie's document on the screen. Tell her I'm ready to talk. Tell her I'm ready to answer for my failings. I hung up. The acceleration was dizzying. The investigation was a slow, legal grind. The court of public opinion was a stampede. And Evie, from wherever she was, had just whipped it into a frenzy and handed me the only possible set of reins. I was no longer solving a crime. I was taking direction in a play written by my missing wife. The next act required me to destroy myself on national television. And the most terrifying part? It was the most practical, efficient way forward. Chapter 7, Controlled Detonation. The mask shatters. On live TV, the king of coping publicly unravels. He confesses to being a monster of emotional neglect. But is this a genuine breakdown or the most calculated move yet? Chapter 7 is live, only on Novella Station. The makeup felt like spackle. The studio lights were twin suns, bleaching out every shadow, every place to hide. I sat in the faux living room set, across from Maya Thorne, a woman whose smile was as sharp as the crease in her trousers. Lily had begged me to rehearse, to have talking points. I'd refused. Rehearsal would show. This had to be a collapse, not a presentation. But as the sound tech clipped the mic to my lapel, the real reason I'd always avoided drama flashed behind my eyes, unbidden. Not as a philosophical choice, but as a survival reflex. My mother hadn't been sad. She'd been a performance artist of melancholy. Dinner tables were stages for weeping soliloquies about her unfulfilled life. My father's response was operatic rage, slammed doors, shattered dishes, grandiose pronouncements of leaving, followed by sullen, hungover returns. Their love was a fire they kept fed with emotional gasoline, and my brother and I were just scorched bystanders. I learned to make myself small, quiet, computational. I learned that emotion was not a feeling. It was a weapon or a trap. Warmth was just a prelude to a burn. This silent cure wasn't born in a seminar. It was poured in the foundry of that chaotic, exhausting house. And Evie had seemed like the opposite. She was a still pond. I mistook her quiet for peace, her agreeableness for contentment. I thought I'd found someone whose emotional economy matched mine. Low overhead, high stability. I've been auditing the wrong ledger. Her quiet wasn't peace, it was observation. Her agreeableness wasn't contentment, it was curation. She was the archivist of my failures, and I'd handed her the filing system. We're living 5. 4. A producer's voice cut through the memory. Maya Thorne's smile tightened, her eyes locking onto mine. The red light on the camera glowed like a single, judging eye. Finn Cole, she began, her voice a blend of syrup and steel. Thank you for coming. You're here amid unimaginable circumstances. Your wife, Evie, is missing, and the public conversation has become focused on you. I nodded, my throat dry. I planned to use my podcast voice, the calm, explanatory tone. But the memory of my mother's theatrical sobs, my father's booming fury, rose like bile. I couldn't be them. I had to be their opposite. But Evie's script demanded I be something else entirely. I started and my voice cracked. Authentically, the sound was alien to me. I want to talk about Evie, not as a victim in a story, but as my wife. Maya leaned forward, a predator sensing a stumble. Go on. I've written a lot about emotional management, I said, the words feeling thick and stupid. About efficiency. I presented it as a solution. But I think for Evie, it was the problem. There, the first brick pulled from my own wall. Can you explain that? Maya's voice was softer now, coaxing. She wanted child. I said it plainly, and I discussed it as a systems integration issue. Logistical hurdles. Financial planning. I gave her a cost-benefit analysis when she was giving me her heart. The cliché tasted like ash, but it was the language of this arena, not mine. I was so afraid of drama, of the messiness my parents lived in, that I tried to sterilize my entire life. I sterilized her. The confession was leaving my body like a toxin. I wasn't performing a breakdown. I was having one. The careful architecture of my identity was groaning under the weight of her design. The police have a diary, Maya pressed gently. Entries that suggest she was afraid, that she felt like a ghost in your machine. Did you see that? Did you see her fading? The ghost in his machine. The phrase was now a public tagline. I looked down at my hands, clenched in my lap. A tell. I never had tells. I didn't see it, because I wasn't looking. I was looking at my spreadsheets, my podcast metrics, my own reflection. I was the most self-absorbed man alive, and I packaged it as enlightenment. My voice hitched again. This wasn't an Evie script. This was something older, uglier breaking through. The little boy hiding from a shouting. I deserve their suspicion. I deserve this public shaming. Because I failed her. Completely. If I had been different, she would be here. I didn't cry. That would have been too much like my mother. But my eyes glistened under the brutal lights. My composure was in tatters. I was a blueprint for emotional failure. Maya was silent for a beat, letting the image sear into the dribble. You're confessing to being a bad husband, but the police are investigating a crime. Do you have any idea what happened to Evie? I looked directly into the camera lens. I imagined her, in some sun-drenched villa, watching this. I spoke to her. No, I said, and it was the truth. I don't know what happened, but I know I created the conditions for a tragedy. I built a beautiful, empty house, and I left the woman I loved alone in it. The interview ended shortly after. In the green room, Lily was staring at me, her face pale. My God, Finn, I don't know what that was. It was a car crash. A beautiful, horrible car crash. My phone, still in my pocket, buzzed. A notification from the encrypted app. Unknown good. The pivot is initiated. The fool is born. Now they'll argue. Monster or miserable fool. Doubt is a seed. Water it. Wait for the next instruction. I didn't respond. I felt hollowed out. I had done it. I had weaponized the very childhood trauma I'd spent a lifetime building a fortress against. I had become a pathetic, weeping headline to survive. But as I walked out into the parking garage, a young sound assistant jogged up to me, her eyes wide. "Mr. Cole," she said, thrusting a folded piece of paper into my hand. "A woman. She gave me $10 to give this to you after the show. Said she was a fan." I unfolded the paper. It was a receipt from a gas station 20 miles away. On the back, in that same elegant, lethal script, was a single word. Encore. Chapter 8. Water the seed. The twist that changes everything. A single piece of paper delivers the final, devastating blow. The frame is no longer for one crime, but two. Finn's world collapses. Chapter 8 is live, only on Novella Station. The Encore receipt sat on my desk, a silent, paperweight command. I didn't touch it. I let it sit there, a stark white rectangle against the dark walnut, evidence from a phantom. The interview aired. The reaction was a schism, exactly as Evie's message had predicted. The social media feeds split into two warring tribes. Tribe 1, see? A cold-blooded performance. He's mimicking remorse because his lawyer told him to. Tribe 2. That was raw. That was real. That's not a killer. That's a broken man who loved his wife badly. The monster versus the miserable fool. The seed of doubt was sprouting, a sickly, contentious green shoot. My inbox, once a stream of speaking requests and fan mail, was now a sewer pipe. But nestled in the filth was an email from Martin, my agent. Subject: damage control? Finn, the publisher is still nervous, but the narrative shift has them pausing the pause. The morning shows are off, but a couple of long-form podcasters, the earnest, complicated men types, are circling. They want the real story. Your journey. They want to hear you talk about the failure of your own philosophy. It's grotesque, but it's traction. You game? I was not game. The interview had felt like a surgical removal of my spine. To do it again, to make a tour of my humiliation, was unthinkable. The encrypted app pinged. Unknown. You're hesitating. Sentimentality for the ruins of your old self? The podcast offer is the next logical step. Accept. Topic: the architecture of failure. Deconstruct the cure, brick by brick. It's time to bury it so something else can grow. She was in my head, curating my downfall. She was the ghost, the director, the vengeful god of my new, pathetic universe. A different kind of notification flashed, a calendar alert. Anniversary dinner, Le Jardin, 8 p.m. A relic from the old world, a scheduled intimacy. I stared at it. Then I made a decision that was neither logical nor from Evie's script. It was pure, stupid impulse. I called a restaurant. "This is Finn Cole. I had a reservation for tonight for 2. I like to keep it. For 1. The maitre d', a man whose voice usually dripped with unflappable courtesy, stuttered. "Monsieur Cole, of course. We were so sorry to hear. We will see you at 8. I hung up. I was going to go, to sit at that table, to publicly perform the role of the grieving husband on the night that should have been a celebration. It was a gesture of such profound, masochistic drama that my parents would have applauded its flair. It was the absolute antithesis of the silent cure. It was watering the seed with my own blood. The restaurant was hushed when I arrived. A different, thicker silence than the one in my house. This was the silence of a stage before the monologue. Every eye tracked me as I was led to the best table in the center of the room. The orchids I'd ordered for her were there, a cruel, beautiful centerpiece. I ordered the tasting menu we would have shared. I ordered the bottle of burgundy she loved. I sat back straight and ate. Each bite was sawdust. Each sip of wine was vinegar. I was a living exhibit, the man who ate his anniversary dinner alone. I could feel the covert phone cameras, the whispered judgments. Is this strength? Is this madness? I didn't know. I only knew I had to prove to the world, to Mori, to her, that I was committed to this new role. The fool was committed to his folly. Near the end of the meal, as the server cleared the cheese plate I hadn't touched, an older woman approached my table. She had kind, watery eyes and a tremulous smile. "Mr. Cole," she whispered, I lost my husband 2 years ago. I couldn't bear to come to our places. What you're doing, it's so brave. To face it." She patted my hand, her skin papery. "She knows. Wherever she is, she knows." I looked at her, utterly hollow. She saw a performance of love and grief. She saw the story. I was just the empty vessel it was poured into. I managed to nod. "Thank you." As she left, my phone buzzed on the white tablecloth. A news alert. Breaking. Source close to investigation reveals no forensic match between blood stain in Cole home and missing wife. Substance described as plant-based. Analysis ongoing. The world tilted again. This was it. The first crack in the frame. The blood wasn't blood. Mori's most visceral piece of evidence was crumbling. The narrative had to shift. My heart hammered, not with hope, but with a new kind of terror. This would force her hand. Evie's. If the frame weakened, she'd have to tighten it. Or change the game. The check came. I paid, leaving a ridiculously large tip, another grand, foolish gesture. As I stood to leave, the maitre d' hurried over, holding a small, sealed envelope. "Monsieur, this was left for you at the host stand." The gentleman said it was urgent. I took it. Outside in the cool night air, I tore it open. Not her handwriting this time. A printed slip of paper, like a receipt. It was from a private medical lab. Patient ID, E. Cole. Test, quantitative HCG, pregnancy. Date, the day before she vanished. Result, positive. Estimated gestational age, 5 weeks. And beneath, typed, the final variable, the one you optimized away. The ghost wasn't just in the machine, Finn. She was creating new life in spite of it. Now the world will know what you erased. They'll know the cost of your cure. The encore is over. Act 3 begins now. I stood on the sidewalk, the sounds of the city fading to a distant roar. The seed wasn't just sprouting. It had exploded into a poisonous, magnificent bloom. She hadn't just framed me for her murder. She had framed me for the murder of a mother. And our child. The pacing wasn't fast anymore. It was terminal velocity. You just witnessed the perfect frame. You saw the diary, the fake blood, the staged scene, and the shocking final twist that changed everything. What did you love most? Was it Finn's chilling calm under pressure? The bone-deep dread as Evie's plan unfolded? Or the moment you realized this was never about a murder, it was about a masterpiece of revenge? Now, the game changes. In part 2, the trap tightens. The public turns, and Finn will make a desperate move that could either save him or destroy him forever. Don't miss The Silent Cure, Part 2, coming soon only on Novella Station. Stay tuned. Hit subscribe so you never miss an update. Like this video if you're hooked. Share with someone who loves a mind-bending thriller. And comment below, what's the one piece of evidence you still can't explain? Your station for stories that grip. Novella Station.